I'm the Dimmitt. This is my vlog being done in early December. I want to talk about Evel Knievel. When I was about 10 years old, trying to think, I was in the 4th grade anyway, 3rd or 4th grade. My dad, who was much senior to me, you know how old my dad was? My dad shined the shoes of William Jennings Bryan. That's how old my dad was. Oh, I heard that story many times. Dad would say he was there shining shoes. He heard the steam train coming. It came to a stop. And all of a sudden, a bunch of men holding signs came from around the building, and they were chanting, around they come, we're the Bryan men. My dad was totally impressed. Two men came up to my dad and said, come with us. So my dad followed the two men. Dad was a follower, to the train. And they took him on the train. And they said, we'd like you to shine Mr. Bryan's shoes. And my dad knelt down and shined William Jennings Bryan's shoes. It was one of the highlights and most impressive things in my dad's life. And that William Jennings Bryan, he tipped my dad 25 cents. And back then, that was a very big tip. I'm changing directions here. I'm so sorry. Don't mean to do that. Back to Evel Knievel. I'm 10 years old, and my dad and I used to watch the jalopy races on KPTV. It wasn't KPTV, damn it. It was KTTV, Channel 11 in Los Angeles. Every Sunday they would have the jalopy races. I really wasn't interested in the jalopy races, to be perfectly honest. It was always the same. The cars ran around and around, and it was fun to watch them crash and burst into flames, but it wasn't my prime interest. But I watched it because, one, it was something I could do with my dad. He didn't do a lot. There were 7 kids in the family. I was the last of the 7, and he was pretty well wore out by this time. But this was something I could do with my dad. And there was a TV show broadcast from there. And I was interested in that TV show. Bill Welch was the announcer. I remember his name. And I would go and I would stand by the railing and watch the TV show, look at the cameras and see all the people that were there putting on the television show. Well, this particular afternoon, Evel Knievel, not much older than I, had just started. It was the start of his career there at Culver City. And he had ridden a motorcycle up a ramp and drove it in the air through a flaming hoop, all burning in smoke. And he had survived it. Bill Welch on KTTV was interviewing him. Then the interview ended. And I just stood there agog, not even realizing I was standing next to the portion of the railing that would open. The railing opens, and there he is right in front of me, Evel Knievel. I'm 10 years old. And I said to him, because I realized I could speak, he was right there. I said, I should like to interview you too. He sat down. Of course, I didn't even work for the school newspaper. I mean, I didn't have a tape recorder. I didn't have a microphone. So I thought I better start the interview. And I said, so you ride a motorcycle? And Evel Knievel said, yes, I do. And he told me about his motorcycle. And when he finished, I said, "Good, thank you for allowing me to interview you." Kind of forgot it. Move ahead now, approximately 20 years. I'm in Portland. Evel Knievel now is at the height of his fame, and I have a chance to interview him again. And this interview goes well, except I started the interview, I'm really not sure why, because I probably hadn't prepared it properly. I started it by saying, "So you drive a motorcycle?" And when we finished, I said, "You know, you were in Culver City. I did my first interview with you." And Evel Knievel looked me right in the eye and said, "The boy that didn't have the tape recorder and didn't have any notes?" I said, "How possibly could you have remembered that?" And he said, "You know, that was one of the first interviews I did, and you never forget those kind of things." So the third interview, Evel wasn't at the height of his career. It wasn't long after he did that jump over the Grand Canyon. And Robbie, his son, had just started doing his stunt motorcycle riding. And Evel was traveling around the country with Robbie and kind of just being there in the interviews. The interview went well, and Robbie answered maybe 40 or 50% of the questions, and Evel didn't really get too involved in the interview. When we finished, Mr. Knievel said, let's go have lunch. And we went across the street. Here in Portland, one of the more prestigious restaurants is one called Jake's Crawfish. It's world known. You can even look it up on the internet. And we had lunch. And it was an interesting lunch. I learned several things about Evel Knievel that you probably would never know. One, he is a man who was interested in his fans. It was about 10 minutes, I think, into the meal before people began to realize who was sitting at the table there. And when people would come up, Evel would allow them to sit right at the table. I've never had that happen before. And he would answer their questions, and he would talk to them. He would shake their hands, and he would sign autographs. Very, very correct, you know. That's what people should do when you have a certain amount of stardom, but very few do. A lot of people are offended. And I had a chance to see Evel Knievel, the dad, who on a napkin was scribbling out a ramp and talking to Robbie about how this stunt that he was going to be doing could be very dangerous. And Robbie was saying, well, no, it's kind of all mathematics. You know, the ramp's at so many degrees. It's different than when you did it. And Evel made the remark, different, that is, if everything stays the same as those calculations you're doing. But you could see he was truly concerned about what his son was doing. When he got up, it was quite apparent that he would not be doing any more stunt riding because he had a very difficult time even moving and walking. He had broken almost every bone in his body, and arthritis was getting the best of him. It was hard for him to even move. Anyway, I watched him go out to a black car with a license plate that said Evel and waved as they drove off. Those were the 3 times that I had a chance to be involved and talk with Evel Knievel. And now, if you will excuse me.